Thanks for tuning in to the Proline Handicapping Show on the web. Coming up, NBA action with the Raptors and Pistons, and college hoops featuring Iowa State and Texas, Virginia taking on Virginia Tech, and New Mexico hosting Air Force. But first, let's hear from our Proline panelists.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Proline here on the web. I'm Dave Koken. Glenn McGrew back from his week off. Scott Spreitzer is here as well. And Jim Feist is drying off after getting soaked in Miami at the Super Bowl. And we'll, I guess, talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, as it turned out to be. Not much of a game.
Hey, wait a minute, a week off. Was there a show last week?
Yeah, we actually did a show, yeah.
Damn,
one of the best we've ever had.
Really? I'm going to tell Jim you said that. I'm going to tell you Jim. No, he wasn't.
This was not a good game.
It was.
You know,
it wasn't.
It's been dissected just a little bit since Sunday. This is a simple game to dissect. The Bears get killed.
No, Rex Grossman got killed.
He was
by his own. You know what? He's taking a real big hit right now, Grossman, which he should. I mean, that one pass, as soon as he threw it, I'm sitting there going, this is going to get picked, the one that was run back for the touchdown.
Yeah.
And they were moving at the time.
It looked like a pooch punt.
Exactly. What was it, a 5-point game at the time, and they're moving.
Yeah.
They've already got about 35 yards in the drive, and he throws that float or whatever it was. I guess he thought Fred Thomas was playing corner for the Colts in the Super Bowl. But anyway, it wasn't all his fault. If you remember, I'm going to say the score at the time was still 16-14 early on in the second half. They were driving. They had the ball at about the Indianapolis, I'm going to say about the 38-yard line. They got a 9-yard play on first down, 2nd and 1. Okay, now, I'm a big Lovie Smith fan. He showed a lot of guts, by the way, in keeping Rex Grossman at quarterback all season long when it would have been easy at one time this season to change. Okay, you got Grossman in there. He really hadn't made a major mistake yet. It's 2nd and 1. You don't want this guy to have to make a play. On 2nd and 1, you're moving the ball. You're getting 7 yards per carry out of Thomas Jones. They decide they're going to drop back and pass. Okay, you could do that with a good quarterback. You can't do that with Grossman. That's the first sack, which lost 9 yards, I believe. So you've got 3rd and 10.
Then you had the next play.
Then you have the next play, which you'll lose another 10 yards because of Grossman, and now it's 4th and 20. You had 2nd and 1. You're at the 38. The guy's running for 7 yards per carry. I'll never forget, about 2 years ago, I'm watching an Oklahoma game, and Barry Switzer's in the press box doing a little bit of color, just a little guest color for a few minutes, and Urban Meyer was in the same situation. Great running backs, running the ball, 2nd and 1. He decides to pass. His guy gets sacked, 3rd and 8 or whatever, and he throws a pick. And he goes, run the ball. You've got 2 chances at the team's 38-yard line to get 1 yard. If you can't do it, you might as well pack your bags anyway. Yeah. I thought it was a real bad coaching decision that put Grossman in a real tough spot.
You know, I would have liked to see him run it too, but playing devil's advocate, I mean, you can kind of understand the thinking here. Boy, this is a quarterback that you don't want to have passing when it's 3rd and 9. You want to throw it when they don't expect it.
I don't want him to throw it at all.
Well, maybe you're right, but I mean, I really can understand the call. I mean, like you said, they're running the ball well. Indianapolis is expecting to run, and they surprise you. But
here's the thing, I know you play devil's advocate.
Sure,
the Colts,
I know.
Defense has been horrible all season against the run, except the 3 playoff games against power runners. They haven't seen a Thomas Jones back in the playoffs, and he's getting 7 yards per carry. Run the ball twice, 2nd and 1 and 3rd down and 1. I bet you get the first down.
But, you know, I'm glad you said, you start about with Grossman. First words out of our mouth, or almost out of everybody's, is Rex Grossman and the bad job he did. But let's not kid ourselves. There was a lot of mistakes by this Bears team. The offensive line, you mentioned 7 yards a pop, but he had and I really followed Jones because that was my biggest prop, was over 74.5 yards. And, of course, he popped for 52 in the first quarter, and then I knew it was all downhill from that point. And then
he
had another.
Fun.
And then, oh, yes, it
was
is.
Over with. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And then he had another big gain of about 18 or 19. So if you took away those two, let's face it, whenever the Bears needed to gain some yards in the ground, they didn't get it. And it wasn't Jones's fault. The offensive line did not play that well in this game.
Let's not forget, it was a 5-point game with 10
that
minutes
was
to
a
go in the
miracle.
fourth quarter.
So
they were doing just fine, I thought.
Yeah. Well, they were getting destroyed, but they were hanging in.
But they were hanging in.
And
and you know what?
The defense
I don't
in the
remember.
red zone was good.
It was in the red zone, but I don't remember the last time. Let's face it, when you're a team that really got to the Super Bowl because of defense, I don't think you've ever had a squad in past history that I can recall that played so poorly or tackled so poorly in a game.
Yeah,
there were so many missed tackles. Manning, they gave him credit for throwing the ball short, and then the runner was making lots of yards afterwards. There was a lot of missed tackles, the most I've seen in years.
It's very important now because you've hit on a key point in this game, and this is why Manning. Who are these people complaining about Manning as the MVP? Are you serious? Manning was the one who was audibleizing at the line of scrimmage and calling all this underneath stuff, because in the rain, guess who's got a great advantage? That's what you do in the rain, is you throw underneath stuff, let running backs they know where they're going.
Exactly. But especially quarterbacks that play outside. Manning's an indoor quarterback, makes it even more impressive.
He was awesome.
He was
outstanding. He coached the game on the field for that team.
I got to tell you, I mean, I saw, people look at stats too much and make judgments on that, and they don't know what they're watching. No offense to anybody who thinks that Joseph Adai or Dominic Rhodes could have been co-MVPs. They both had great games. But the key to success in this game was definitely, these were all checkoffs. Just about every pass to Adai, and they caught 10 passes in the game, I believe it was a checkoff at the line of scrimmage. That's Manning. The guy is just an amazing quarterback.
Brilliant. I mean,
he's absolutely brilliant. Yep. And that was going to be a big problem with the weather conditions for the Bears, was making those tackles on guys when they caught the ball in the flat. You're going to find guys in one-on-one out there. It's tough to tackle one-on-one in the rain.
Although, getting back to Manning,
the rain had nothing to do with the first Colts touchdown when the corner decided to come inside and leave, what's his name, Reggie Wayne was it, that was wide open 40 yards downfield for a touchdown.
It's all time. You're talking about an eighth of a second more. And Peyton Manning can't possibly get the ball that far down the field because he was getting hit. And actually, it forced him to underthrow the ball a little bit.
Yeah, it was like a punt almost.
Yeah, because he was certainly getting hit at that point, but timing's everything, and he was able to get the ball off.
Speaking of touchdowns, it's amazing too. I'm sure you've seen it in the newspapers or commented by other people, but it's kind of like the deja vu all over again. It's eerie how much similarity there was between this and the national championship game. What with the kickoff return by a team, gets out ahead right away, Ohio State, and then dominated the rest of the game, and that's exactly what happened in the Super Bowl.
By the way, I ended up splitting the actual game. Had the lost the side with Chicago, won the total with the under, and then we had a nice 3-0 online at jimfeist.com right here at this website with our props. But I got to tell you, I wasn't feeling too good about the under. About 2 seconds into the game, and it looked, and that was the
2 seconds,
thing.
One quarter. What was it? 13-6 after one quarter. 14-6 after one quarter.
And that was with about 5 minutes to go in the first quarter, if I remember right. But I remember doing some shows, and when
by halftime,
you thought it was a dead over. I mean, no doubt about it.
By the way, I don't often criticize the odds makers, but I thought they really blew the halftime line. I was sitting at an establishment watching the game. We thought the halftime line was going to come 6, Colts 6. Because they clearly were the better football team. And they came, understand in some places offshore, they came 3.5 and some 4. And it's like they're going to get pounded with Colts action. Sure enough, it went to minus 135, 4.5 minus 135 around town. They could have done better with the halftime number. That was an easy call on the Colts and under in the second half, because by that time.
But again, it's a 5-point game.
Well, I know, but
it was just in the fourth quarter. And
a lot of times, how many times?
Rex Grossman throws the horrible fluttery pass that's picked off and run back for a touchdown. So again, I got to put it on his shoulders. He blew it. They had a chance.
He was awful.
As bad as they were at times tackling, as bad as they were covering the receivers when they made their cuts, which had a lot to do, as Dave said, with the wet field. They still had a chance in the fourth quarter of that game
was amazing.
if they had a quarterback.
This is one of the things I'm sitting there saying to myself: how are they in this game? They're getting killed.
Let's go back to the last.
On the field all day long. The offense really wasn't doing anything, and it's still a 5-point game. It's like, how?
It would have been a shame for Indianapolis Colt backers to lose this contest to the spread, and yet you can go even further. The second to the last possession by the Bears, they drove for 2 or 3 first downs, and on a fourth and 11 or 12, Grossman actually threw a perfect pass over the middle for about 16 yards.
That's true.
The guy caught it, and then it was a good hit,
and
knocked away. Who knows if they make that? I mean, let's face it, the time was, there was still probably about 2 minutes to go at that point. It would have been a first down in about the 30, 35, so who knows. But one last thing I want to say about Manning. This is another amazing thing about it, because one of you guys brought it, or Dave, you said about how he checks off. No quarterback in the NFL does that as often, or certainly as well as Manning. And one of the things that I've seen other quarterbacks that do a lot of audibleizing at the line of scrimmage, I noticed that invariably they lose a couple of timeouts every half, because of course you start making changes, and those seconds are going down. Suddenly you have to call a timeout. I think it happened once in the game this time. It's amazing how he can make those changes at the line of scrimmage and still get the ball off before
that's why they practice that stuff.
Oh, I know, but everybody practices it. He's just so sensational.
Let's get to the important stuff for just a second. I'm watching, I think it was Yahoo Sports, their website.
Commercials?
Well, that
Terrible
was part of
the worst commercials.
It started out well, but that's not what I was going to talk about.
But the worst commercials of all time.
The rock, paper, scissors thing
overall,
was
the worst of all
Let me tell you
time.
something. The Budweiser dog commercial
Yes, that was great.
so good, it offset a lot of the other ones.
Here's when you start feeling old. The guy for Yahoo Sports writes an article, and he looks like he's about 12, so it really tees you off. But he's writing an article about the halftime show, and he goes, "What is it with all these old timers having to play halftime show?" I'm like, "Old timers, Prince." I'm like, it's the first time they've had a guy under 70 that they haven't had to reanimate for the halftime show since Timberlake and Janet Jackson did their thing. So I liked the halftime show. I thought it was much better performance.
I
than
was
we saw
sure Prince
out of
was
Grossman.
going to rip his shirt open, you know?
I thought you would. I thought for sure you'd wear that scarf today.
By the way, I want everybody to know I kept my record perfect in the Super Bowl. I have never missed on two things in the Super Bowl, ever. One is that I've never watched the halftime show. I'm too busy eating at whatever party I'm at. And the second thing is, I don't know how much money I've spent on those stupid boxes over the years.
Those boxes?
Yeah,
squares.
Those. You never won one of those either.
I have never won a quarter. Not one. Not one. I don't even come close. I mean, I'm the guy who's got 8 and 6 or something like that.
Well, next year, let me know because you're the do factor, Dave. You got to.
I used to always,
when it comes to that, I'd get the doofus factor.
The doofus. I used to hang out at those parties every Super Bowl, and then I was always eating at halftime, and I missed the Janet Jackson thing until somebody posted it online. So I've been right in front of the TV set ever since, and I've seen 80-year-old Mick Jagger, 90-year-old Paul McCartney, and a guy who wears a scarf on his head. That's what I've gotten to see. So I think I'll go back to eating at halftime.
And by the way, the hunch prop that you could have had in this game, which would be, since Prince is from an NFC city, and he works at the 31-21 club at the Rio, go NFC 31, AFC 21, didn't work out.
Darn it.
Didn't work out like the Ohio State Michigan game with the number, the state lottery number in Ohio that night, which came 42-39.
Did it
really?
Oh yeah, you didn't know that? Oh yeah, that was absolutely amazing. A bunch of people played it, and they came 42-39, which was.
This is information you cannot do without for the last 5 minutes. By the way,
we will get.
This is what separates the people in the media and us handicappers, right?
It's also what separates us from our regular show during the year on USA, because we have a little more free reign. We don't have to go to as many commercial breaks and stuff like that, but we do like to go to commercial breaks every now and then so we can catch our breath. I can fill up my coffee, and then we can come back and start talking some basketball, because the hoops now take center stage, and we will come back and look at an NBA matchup between a surprisingly hot team in the NBA and one that made a deal a signing that looks like it may have them as the favorite in the Eastern Conference. That's when we return on Proline.
Up next, Saturday's NBA with the Toronto Raptors taking on the Detroit Pistons. But first, let's hear from Primetime's Glenn McGrew, who nailed his hardcourt parlay of the week last Saturday, as well as his chalkboard game of the month, and has a huge triple header set to fire this week.
We got NBA basketball coming up in just a second. I know Scott and Dave are chomping at the bit to talk a little bit about the pros. But first, I got to mention last week. Well, I nailed last week's Proline basketball offer on Saturday. My hardcourt parlay of the week is a winner. Iowa over Indiana, pretty good ball game. And then South Florida topping Notre Dame, getting the money against the Irish. And then, of course, we capped off a marvelous Saturday with my chalkboard game of the month, Stanford, as they just slammed California. Tell you, the Pac-10 has really been great for me this season, although that's not real surprising. I've been on a season-long heater now in the NBA, and of course I'm on a 3-week rush in college ranks. You give me a call Saturday. I'm going to capitalize on both of those sports. You call me, you're going to get 2 Conference Game of the Year releases in college hoops. You're going to also get my pro basketball Game of the Month, and all 3 games guaranteed to win, or I'm going to give you 10 days of my pro and college hardwood court plays absolutely free. That's how much I like these 3 contests. It's on my $20 power play line late Friday, the number 1-900-226-0410. That's 2 Conference Game of the Year plays in college hoops, my pro game of the month. 1-900-226-0410. And now let's go to the Detroit Pistons, the team you were referring to earlier, Dave. A big pickup.
I think they're the favorite in the Eastern Conference right now, which isn't saying a whole lot, obviously. But I really like the Chris Webber pickup from them. Obviously, he was done in Philadelphia. He fits this team. He gives them a shot-blocking presence on the inside, and this is a team that wins with defense. And Webber really fits their system well. They got a tough matchup here, though. This Toronto Raptors team has been playing some great basketball. they've actually been playing the best ball in the Eastern Conference over the last 3-4 weeks. They made a commitment, basically a commitment to defense. They changed what they were doing up there and started getting a lot more selective with their shots, stretched their bench a lot more, started playing Calderon a lot more, who's a good-looking player.
Yes, he is.
And
surprising.
Toronto, Detroit's I think Detroit's the favorite in the Eastern Conference right now. I think they're, in my opinion, a good favorite right now. I think more so than Miami, even assuming Miami's healthy at the end of the year. I think Detroit would beat them this time around. But this Toronto team could be the wild card in the Eastern Conference. They could be a real pain in the neck to play in the playoffs at that level because they've really bought into this system that they're using up there, and they've beaten a lot of good teams.
I thought when Ford got injured that there'd be problems for them. This Calderon, we mentioned it, I think, two weeks ago. 15 points, 9 assists a game, the last 7 contests. I mean, he's really picked up the slack. What this does is eventually this gives them 2 real, true point guards, and you can always use 2 point guards in the NBA.
Some of the players that have performed as well as they have.
They have.
Now, Bosh, we expected from the guy's a heck of a player, but Anthony Parker, who's basically been a fringe NBA guy, he's bounced between the NBA and other leagues. And he's played well for this squad. I mean, going out there and he's averaging double figures and gets rebounds and assists. When a team buys into what the coach is selling, they can be pretty good.
Sure.
And Toronto is right now. I think this is going to be a fun game.
Calderon's one of my biggest surprises in the NBA this season, the way he's playing. But, I still think, and we could debate this, I don't know if there's a right side to this, but we have our opinions. I still think if the Eastern Conference wants an NBA championship, it's got to be a healthy Miami team. Dwayne Wade is such a difference maker. I don't think that Detroit can knock off a Western Conference
Question is, can they be a healthy team?
Well, that's the bottom line. Yeah. I mean, and we could debate that. You could, we could argue each other into agreeing
well, they won
with
it
each other
last year,
eventually.
so obviously there's
Sure.
something to...
And as long as they're healthy, I think that's the only team from the East that can actually beat a Western Conference team in the finals. But just if you had a crystal ball before the season and it showed which team would be the team that would have you hitting almost 70% against the spread for the entire season, would you have guessed it would be the Toronto Raptors? They lead the league as far as we're concerned out here in Las Vegas. Going into this week, 29-19 against the spread, an excellent number. So you've got a choice of taking them and all the great things that Dave just said about Toronto, which are all well-deserved. You missed one thing, though. Obviously, Isaiah Thomas built a foundation for this to happen years ago. But anyway, you've got that as your choice. You've got a 50-50 spread covering team of the Detroit Pistons, who, as Dave mentioned, are right now the best team in the Eastern Conference. Or you could do what I'm doing, and that's taking this contest to stay under. Toronto closed.
Toronto's been great on the unders.
They closed January, at least through the 30th, on a 10-0-1 under run. They then had 3 straight overs after that. The line maker adjusted a little bit, plus 2 of the 3 teams they played in that little span. They don't play defense too much, and I'm talking about the Washington Wizards, one of those teams, so they can do basically what they want. So I think because it's gone over a few times again now with Toronto, and because it's kind of a public type of game when the Pistons are involved, that you can get a little bit of an advantage playing the under in this one, and I think you're going to see both teams playing well. Plus, even though Toronto's middle of the pack on defense, Detroit's still in the top 5 as far as points allowed, about 93.5 a game.
Since Weber's arrived, their defensive field goal percentage, which was good anyway, has been even better. It's really near, at the top of the league right now since he's arrived. So I would agree.
What a find for
I like
Weber.
that assessment.
Yeah. And for Weber and the team, what a find for him. He's only had 2 bad games for whatever reason. He can't play against the Wizards. He's got 6 points in each of the 2 games
Because he can't get up
against
and down
Washington.
the court that well.
That's what
Really?
it is.
I mean,
You're right. And they hustle you up and down, and it's a good point. But he's averaging about 16 a game against everybody else. So Weber's really getting it done right now.
I tell you what, it was interesting. There were a lot of teams interested in Weber. He had some options. He was considering Miami, so we'd mentioned about Miami just the Lakers, San Antonio, a team that could probably have used Weber. I think that he could have fit in there too, probably. But the Pistons are the ones that got him. He said afterwards, "I chose him because I'd have a chance to start." And boy, that's the option. And what makes Detroit so difficult now is, I mean, Weber is not the shot blocker, quite the rebounder that Ben Wallace was, but pretty darn close.
Well, he gives us something on the other end.
And he does, and he won't miss as many free throws as Ben, right? So what happens is all of a sudden this Detroit team, if you're looking at the entire NBA, it might be the most balanced scoring team or the team with the most options. They have 5 guys that you have to watch every trip down the floor.
So do the Pistons, the deadline's coming up. I'll tell you what would make sense. I think if they could pick up one more body for their rotation, doesn't have to be a starter, but a decent body for their rotation, I think they would have a real good chance to maybe make the run, the big run at the end of the year. I mean, they're a good team.
Well, just because they're in the East, I think they've got a great chance of making a run.
Sure.
There's no reason why they can't make it.
Well, but I'm
even with
talking about
have.
actually feeling good about their chances in an NBA Finals setup. Because and they do have to get lucky. I mean, McDyess his knee can't go bad, and Weber, of course, is very injury prone. But if they were to pick up one more body for that rotation, that might be something.
The one thing about Miami also, you had Dwayne Wade, who talked about, he basically played. He's played for basically 2 years without any time off.
Yeah.
Because of the summer games that he played in this year, and he's missed a lot of time, so he hasn't really had to play a grueling schedule so far in the NBA.
Can Shaq get through a week?
Well, that's the thing, though. Shaq has done this every year for the past 3 or 4 years, where he misses huge chunks of the season, and then is healthy for whatever reason for the playoffs. I'm not saying that they're going to get past Detroit. It's going to be close, but I think if they are healthy, they have the best shot to bring a championship home again to the Eastern Conference like Miami did last year. But maybe it's a blessing in disguise what has happened to Dwayne Wade and this team throughout this season, not having him. But then again, you got the coaching thing going on. It's going to be interesting down the stretch.
Everybody's probably listening is wondering, well, I mean, why are you only talking about 2 Eastern teams? But Miami, of course, been injured. Detroit's the only team. I think they're 14-9. The only team in the East that has a winning record on the road.
Exactly.
You can go to the West and find 5 or 6 teams that can go on.
I don't think the Celtics are going to make it.
Let me write that down.
This system, it's bad. I mean, it really is. There has to be something. They get rewarded for tanking games right now.
It's horrible.
I mean, it's the same thing with Cleveland. You'll never convince me Cleveland didn't tank games 2 years ago to get position for LeBron. Even though it doesn't automatically get him the first pick, it just gives him a real better chance. And, Boston, they benefit so much by losing right now as long as they get one of the first 2 picks. Because those 2 guys are just so great, Odin and Durant.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I mean, you should never benefit from losing.
The only thing, and getting to that, I imagine if it comes down to those 2 guys, I would personally, if I'm a GM, so would I. And you know why? Because you figure at 32, 33, Odin probably only has about 2 or 3 years left.
Is he that young?
Yeah. So
You know what? When you talk, I got to bring something up about Boston. Dave basically.
By the way,
he spent a lot of time in Boston.
We'll tease this for one. Durant. A lot of conversation about Durant in the next game because we're going to look at Iowa State, Texas.
You spent a lot of time, obviously, in your younger years in Boston, and I'll tell you what. You're a big Red Sox fan, maybe a Celtic fan. We haven't talked about them. Okay. When I was a kid, by the way,
not as obsessed as I am with the Red Sox. But.
Well, you're a baseball guy anyway, first and foremost. But as a kid, I hated the Celtics until they got Larry Bird because I grew up in Missouri Valley Conference country and was a huge Larry Bird fan from seeing him play in person. Became a big Celtic fan, and then the other night, last week, I'm watching the Celtics play the Lakers, and at Boston, they're chanting MVP when Kobe steps to the free throw line.
Unbelievable.
And, I'm not a Celtic fan. I'm a fan of who covers the spread for the last 15 years of my life. The bottom line is that hit a nerve. And I'm like, how in the heck can they sit there and chant MVP in Boston when a Laker, of all people, is standing at the free throw line?
The tradition is gone.
Oh, I know.
They
you wouldn't have seen that happen in a game where the
Derek
Lakers.
Jeter steps to the plate in Fenway, are they going to get MVP?
I don't think so.
Never.
No. Jeter sucks. Yes. By the way, you want to hear this? Is only in Red Sox country. This is the most obsessed. We are Red Sox fans are without question the most obsessed fans in any sport. We make soccer fans over in England look tame. There's a new thing on New England Sports Network, which carries the Red Sox games this summer. I can't remember the name of the show, but they actually, it's a dating show where the dates take place at Fenway Park.
Oh, that's cool.
And you get to find out whether the guy hits a home run or strikes out. It's a pretty good concept. I don't think they'll be including film on that, but but they're actually building a show around dating at a Red Sox game. It's amazing. I guess if both the man and the woman both yell Jeter sucks at the same time, they're getting married. Okay. All right, we mentioned Kevin Durant. Wow, is this guy good? Texas hosting Iowa State. I think Texas is probably going to win this basketball game, but we'll look at it from a spread standpoint when we continue on Proline.
Coming up, Big 12 basketball between Iowa State and Texas. But first, we'll hear from Smokin' Dave Koken, who went 2-1 last week and is releasing his biggest play of the college hoop season this Saturday, his college basketball game of the year, a monster winner you can get absolutely free.
Okay, welcome back to Proline, and we'll look at college basketball in just a moment. Iowa State and Texas, and a couple of other games to follow. Last week, quick recap of my conference game of the year package. I had 3 games that I used for conference games of the year. Colonial, which was Hofstra against Northeastern. Nice revenge spot for Hofstra against the Northeastern team that hasn't won on the road all year. That turned out to be pretty easy. Florida, this is where you use information to your benefit. And Noah had stated that one of the biggest reasons he came back this year was because he wanted another shot at Tennessee. They had lost both games to Tennessee last year, and boy, Florida goes out 26 ahead at the half against Tennessee. Absolutely killed the team. Ended up winning by 16, so it got really close on the numbers. They kind of went through the motions in the second half. Nevertheless, a winner, SEC game of the year. Lost the Big East game of the year by a point. I had Marquette -8 against Providence, and they missed 7 free throws in the last 2 minutes of the game. Guys, come on, make a free throw. They end up winning by 7. So I had to settle for 2 out of 3, but that's still a nice win. And it leads me into the big one that goes on Saturday. College basketball game of the year is here. There's some great setups at this time of year because it is a lot of second meetings taking place in college basketball. And if you watch carefully in the first meetings, you can find those spots where revenge is a real good factor and where it's a completely overrated factor, where the line gets adjusted and you end up with great value. You have to be on top of those, and you can score some really nice plays on both sides of that equation. There's one that's an absolute stick out, and I'm going to use that for my college basketball game of the year. It's available anytime right now, right up until game time for $50 at the website or on a 900 number, which is 1-900-287-4477. However, you can save the $50 if you call the office anytime on Saturday morning. So you want to make sure and call on Saturday, 1-800-547-4224, and that college basketball game of the year, you got to pay $50 for online or on the phone. You'll get that completely free of charge. We're going to throw in some good stuff with that as well, bonus plays. So make sure and take advantage. 1-800-547-4224 to get that play free. We go to Iowa State, Texas. Obviously, Texas is a big favorite in this basketball game with good reason. Iowa State is not a particularly good basketball team. I think McDermott's done a nice job in making some progress with them, but they're very limited. Off a bad game against Missouri earlier this week.
At home.
Oof. I had a loser in that game. In fact, I took Iowa State and got my teeth kicked in the second half of that game. They lose by a lot. The Longhorns are going to do what they want in terms of getting the game in the win column. But that spread comes into play. Sure. And is Texas going to be razor sharp here after a series of kind of important games? Did they get fired up enough to cover a big number against Iowa State? I'm not so sure about that.
That's a good lead-in for what I was going to say, because here's a situation in which if they would have beaten A&M, a great sandwich spot right now, because Texas plays Oklahoma State on Monday night. The problem is, though, you can't jump into this as a typical sandwich situation, because not only did they lose at A&M and really get thumped down the stretch in that game, they lost the game before that at home to Kansas State. So I think that will have this team focused on the task at hand, and they can beat this cream puff pretty handily if they want. I think they will. You've got, first of all, Iowa State, who's lost 6 of the last 7 by 13 points per game on average. Now they got to go to Austin. They got to face the man-child that is Kevin Durant, who, by the way, guys, I don't care what they say, I don't think he's going to stick around for the entire 4 years.
Really?
Right. But I'll tell you what, McDermott doesn't have a lot to utilize here or play with this Iowa State team, and he has done a pretty good job, although I really thought that he laid an egg the other night against Missouri, not just his team. They'll get better. They'll be better next year. The bottom line is, though, they're just in a bad spot here playing against a Texas team that lost their last homer. They lost 2 in a row. I think they get real healthy here against the Cyclones and win by whatever they want, cover the spread.
Get more about McDermott. They didn't expect much out of him his first season at Ames. I mean, let's face it, this guy came in here, lost 2. Well, he didn't lose them, but 2 awesome guards, Stinson and Baylock. Sure. I mean, those guys, it seemed like one of those. It's one of those situations where
not win with those guys.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't
that amazing? Well, that's why he's not there any longer. So, I mean, he really had nothing to work with. this guy is a good coach. He went to Northern Iowa, a program that was really a mess. In 5 years, I think he took him to 3 NCAA tournament games. I mean, that's remarkable.
Good recruiting.
He's a good recruiter, and he really teaches defense. And that's shown when Iowa State plays the lower echelon squads, they've done pretty well, and they've held teams low.
That's why I like them against Missouri, to be honest with you.
Good point, exactly, Dave.
Missouri's not particularly good.
No, they aren't. But against in a situation like this, it's awfully
well, and the thing
for
is
them.
that they may be just wearing down at this point.
That's
because they're not a deep squad. They have played very tough basketball, and I think maybe have overachieved some in getting a decent record for a while because they were basically picked by everybody to finish only ahead of Colorado in the Big 12 this year. In terms of and that's the entire conference. Forget the divisions, that's the entire conference. They're no better than the second worst team in the conference. I think they're kind of worn down, and facing an athletic Texas squad, I think you might be right. This
was a little bit ticked off. Yeah.
And Abrams and Augustine, the two guards for Texas. I mean, let's face it. They really should have a field day. For
what I like
not
about,
that you mentioned Durant, but I mean, this is it makes
like
for a lot of
these young studs. These two guys you're talking about, Oden at Ohio State and now Durant at Texas, as they do everything. These guys can be really selfish because they're so good. They do everything within the context of the game. They're also great creators. Durant's going to be one of those guys who makes everybody around him better, I think, at the next level when he gets his feet wet.
Because strong fundamentally.
Oh, he's just
do you think he can play a big guard in the NBA? Do you think he's got good enough handling?
Yeah. He's that talented.
Exactly.
Scary.
I honestly would take him first. I'd take him over Oden because I think he can be an immediate impact, whereas Oden might be. He'll be good. Right away, but I don't think he may not be great for a few years.
You wonder about his offensive skills aren't
I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, I think he's fine on offense. He doesn't take many shots.
No,
he doesn't.
He's a smart player. But the thing is, by the time he really develops to his peak level, you may not be able to keep him anymore.
See, Oden has to be a right fit.
Durant's going to step right in.
Yeah, Oden has to be a right fit. He has to get on the right team, I think, to be a superstar. I think Durant, doesn't matter who he plays for, this guy's just a superstar no matter where he plays.
He may not even be done grown. He's only 18 years old. He's 6'9" now.
Just say the other night, though, I mean, he's coming down the court to have like maybe a 3-on-1 or whatever in the game against A&M, which was on national TV, and fantastic to see Durant's skills. But he'd drive down the court and he'd have a 3-on-1. He'd have a wide-open shot at the free throw line if he wanted it. Instead, he'd make a great pass inside for the easy layup. I mean, he creates for other guys around him.
Also going to be phenomenally successful in terms of generating ad revenue and things like that, because he's a good kid, and I think he knows how to play the game. He's smart. Have you ever interviews done with him? He's always talking about his teammates.
He's got LeBron James maturity.
Yeah,
and
it's just he knows the right things to say and the right things to do. He's not a hot dog.
Right.
He'll make some spectacular plays in the court, but he's not a taunter or anything like that. This guy's got his head on straight. He's a mature young man, and that's nice to see. I mean, I like seeing that. I'm looking forward to seeing this guy at the next level because he's definitely not. We're starting to see a nice change, and I think we're starting to see more and more guys now that are coming out of high school or college, and of course it's just college now because they changed the rule. But the maturity level is different. I think they've got a different mindset than we were seeing maybe 10 years ago.
I hope you're right. I think wishful thinking.
No, I don't think it is at all. I think it's we're seeing some development now. And by the way, as much as I didn't like the rule because I don't think it's fair that a kid can't come out of high school and go directly to the NBA, Durant himself said that it turned out to be a pretty good rule for him because if he'd have gone directly to, he said I would have gone directly to the NBA. And he said, I'd probably be spending all my money on stupid stuff right now. Whereas going to college for years kind of changed his outlook in terms of maturing a little bit and
also develops his game.
Smart with his money when he gets
he was a great player out of high school, but it even helps him develop the game even more.
Oh, yeah.
But he got about a half a dozen, are you kidding me, out of Dickie V. And if you can get a half a dozen of those in one game out of Dickie V, you're doing something special.
He is awesome, baby, with a capital A. He really is something. All right, good rivalry matchup coming up next. This one in the ACC, Virginia and Virginia Tech will square off. Better basketball matchup than a football matchup. We'll tell you about it next.
Next up, Virginia takes on Virginia Tech. But first, we'll hear from Scott Spreitzer, who has had 5 straight winning weeks with his Proline offers and has a 5-play countdown set to win again this Saturday.
Well, welcome back to Proline, everybody. More college basketball coming up in just a moment. Hey, how about 2007 at Smash Mouth Sports? We have cashed all 5 of our Proline packages in 2007 at Smash Mouth Sports. We did it again last week. We hit our TKO Game of the Year with Syracuse. We hit our MAC Game of the Month on Saturday also, as we pulled out another winning package the week before. 4-1, 80% with my 5-play countdown. We've already cashed in the last, 2 weeks. We've had our Mountain West Conference Game of the Year, the TKO Game of the Year that I just mentioned, and a bailout Game of the Year. Well, we're back to the countdowns again on Saturday. 5 big basketball winners, all for just $8 at Smash Mouth Sports. They're all available right now at 1-800-521-1872, topped off by another Game of the Year in college basketball. And as I mentioned, we are 5-0 with Proline packages in 2007. That's like having a ratio of greater than 1 with a thrust to lift. I mean, it's as good as that, which basically that means your bankroll is going straight up and accelerating at the same time. You got to call 1-800-521-1872, 5-play countdown, count it down from number 5 to number 1, the big college basketball Game of the Year available right now. And as far as this game is concerned, we've got Virginia taking on Virginia Tech. I'm going to let you guys banter about this one a bit, but I will say this. Doesn't it seem like Greenberg's doing it again?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think this is a big game for Virginia Tech. They need this game. They have not played well recently, and they need to get back on track. This is a big game for Virginia Tech, also a big rivalry game. And they might be catching Virginia just right because Virginia's off that win against Maryland, which for Virginia is a bigger rival than Virginia Tech is because it's an old ACC matchup, a traditional matchup in the ACC. And that was a really good performance by the Cavaliers. They're playing really solid ball. Virginia's hot right now. I think you're going to get a cheap price in this game with Virginia Tech because they haven't played well lately. Virginia Tech cold, Virginia hot. Keeps the line low, and I think Virginia Tech needs to approach this as probably their most important game of the year. They have to get back on track. Their season could really spin out of control if they lose another game here. I don't think they will, and I'm going to go with the Hokies in this spot.
It'll be tough for them, though. I'm telling you, what a great matchup here in the backcourt. Singletary and Reynolds, just spectacular for this Virginia team. Dowdell and Gordon, what a great duo. I tell you what, those two duos are the best in the ACC. Apologies to North Carolina. These are the 2 best backcourts in that conference and 2 of the best in the nation.
Even bigger than Duke's.
Oh, yeah. Boy, that sounds funny, doesn't it, leaving out Duke when you're talking about the backcourts. But Reynolds, if anybody saw the Duke game against Virginia, Reynolds was incredible. Had 20 of his 25 points for the game in the second half. And then in the last couple of minutes, he went down, and the other kid takes over and makes 2 huge shots. I mean, this is a remarkable team. With both these backcourts so strong, it's funny. You might want to watch, if you're watching the game, watch the front courts because it might be the baselines that decide the contest because it's going to be hard for either one of these 2 guards to take advantage of their counterparts. But I think this one's just too close to call until I see the line on the game. Dave, I think you'll be right. If it comes short because of the way Virginia's playing, I think they've now won 7 straight or something.
Well, it's going to come short.
Yeah, if it comes, well, then I'd probably look at the host.
Well, here's the thing.
But
if it didn't, if the odds makers put this up, put a bigger number on this game, then to me that's even more of an indication that they're saying, hey, this is the spot to, we're going to try and trap the bettors on Virginia, because that works that way sometimes too.
Sometimes, but if they make, to me, that'll be a mistake, and then I'll be on the underdog in the contest.
Well, I basically have made up my mind that this is a spot where I think Virginia Tech's got to be the play, so I know I'll be playing Virginia Tech, but it's not my game of the year.
And we were right. This is a better basketball game than it would have been a football game. Apologies to the Hokies gridiron kids who were pretty good too.
Virginia Hokies, Virginia Tech Hokies, pretty good in college football. The Virginia Cavaliers, not so good.
But they're still quicker than Duke.
Well, I think Duke is. Why can't they get better speed on this team?
He got a lot of good recruits that all of a sudden started going pro early. And he finally had to deal, Krzyzewski, with what everybody else is dealing at that upper echelon level of college basketball. And he hasn't been able to basically fill their needs in the backcourt when that happens. So that's the biggest problem. I mean, you think about some of the guys they had, Corey Maggette being one. You come in for one season, you take off to the NBA. Krzyzewski never had to deal with that before, and now he's kind of learning.
And this is just the guards, the front line. I mean, McRoberts, when that's your best player,
he's okay.
You like him, but to be the best player on a Duke basketball team, that's the season.
McRoberts, he's a lottery pick. He's a good player.
Oh, I think he's really? Oh, I don't think he's got a shot.
I think he's got really good moves for a college player. I think at the next level, it doesn't translate that well because he's slow on that first step.
he can put the ball in the basket. I think he's just a really good
See, to
player.
me, and I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I'm saying he's a 10-point per game player for his career in the NBA is what he looks like to me.
That's a back of the lottery pick, basically.
Yeah.
That's what you get in the 13th, 14th grade. And one other thing about Duke, if you stay in the ACC for a little bit, I don't think anybody's scared of him anymore.
They're not.
And that's that's why Florida State, which had never won there, goes in and wins last Sunday. I think the fear factor just isn't there right now.
Surprised, Dickie V, since you brought him up a little while ago when you were talking about Durant and all the oh babies or whatever it was he said. Interesting. I watched the last ball game that I watched on just a couple of days ago. Vital mentioned his 4 picks for the #1 seeds. A little bit early, but still just kind of fun. A lot of people like this sort of thing. And where it surprised me, he picked Duke as one of the 2 seeds, #2 seeds. Kind of surprised me because I honestly don't. I mean, I know they're 18 and 3 or 4.
That surprised you? I mean, I like Vital,
but I don't see it happen. I don't see that happen.
I mean, Vital knows his stuff. I'm not.
Yes,
gonna,
he does.
and I like him. I think he's legitimate. He really believes in what he's saying.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything, not a phony bone in his body, but. Do you think he slants the ACC and Big East just a tad for 25 years? I mean,
those are the only games he does.
Exactly. And so he's always on those conferences, no doubt about it. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I'm almost shocked he doesn't have Duke as a #1 seed.
No.
No.
He still thinks they're a great backcourt.
I don't
No,
think
the only person that would put him a #1 seed is what's the guy that I don't see him
Jay
so much.
Billis?
No, with the guy that used to partner with Al McGuire. The other announcer, Billy Packer. Packer, if you asked him, what are you kidding about? There's the biggest joke in college basketball history.
There's the guy. Crazy, but he's not overly crazy.
Way more than Vital is. Way more. Are you kidding me?
Prejudice-wise, yeah. I think
No question he's biased.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Not Len.
I understand he played there, and he just has never been able to grasp reality as far as
Do you realize
the thing
that
is, the guy knows so much about basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Here's how old Glenn is. I bet you 50 to 60% of our audience have no idea what he just referenced when he said not Len, when you said biased.
No.
That's how old Glenn is.
Oh, that was, I know.
All right.
Sorry.
We have a Mountain West game.
Celtics.
Yeah, I wish.
Another reference.
Oh, boy. As a Celtics fan, that and Reggie Lewis still never gotten over it. Okay, we're going to talk a little Mountain West basketball next. Air Force is on the road against New Mexico. We know the Lobos are pretty good in fights. How will they do in an actual game against Air Force? We'll talk about that next.
In a moment, New Mexico and Air Force. But first, a reminder that world champion handicapper Jim Feist is making available all of his college basketball executive service plays from now until the national championship game for just $99 when you call toll-free to 1-877-JIM-FEIST. That's 1-877-546-3347. And if you're one of the first 500 callers, get 10 days of Inner Circle NBA as a free bonus.
That's a really terrific offer from world champion handicapper Jim Feist, as you will be getting plays at one very affordable price all the way through the national championship game. So make sure and call the number that you're looking at and get on board with Jim's plays in basketball. Okay, we go to the Mountain West. Air Force in New Mexico. The Lobos making a lot of news for that big fight they had with Wyoming. It seems to have had a little bit of a galvanizing effect on this team. They actually went out there with players missing and got a good road win against Colorado State last Saturday, I guess it was. So maybe this is the thing that gets this team, which has kind of lacked chemistry much of the season, going in the right direction. Air Force coming off a poor performance at San Diego State on Tuesday night. I have a theory on this as far as Air Force is concerned, and Scott also has a theory. They're two different things that they tie in, and maybe an indication of why Air Force may be a little overrated right now. First of all, now I think when Air Force gets to the NCAA tournament and somebody's seeing that system they play for the first time, it's going to be a real obstacle to overcome. It's a very difficult system to defend. But the teams in the Mountain West have now seen it for a few years. Coaches know how to prepare for it. Veteran players know how to prepare for it. And if you're athletic enough, and San Diego State certainly is athletic enough, you can overcome it. And San Diego State did a number on them the other night. I'm very surprised at how badly they beat them in that contest. So that's point one on what is not necessarily a big anti-Air Force stance, but certainly it tempers my enthusiasm for them. You had another theory on Air Force, which is very interesting.
Well, yours, I think, is the more important theory of the two, but mine is just the flat-out arrogance of this squad over the last few years.
Team.
This particular team, the players on this team. because they played so well the last few years in Mountain West play. And I should have known better. Now, if I play my power ratings that are off the line by a good 3 to 4 points, which happens once in a while, I'm going to win more often than not. So normally I'll stick with them as long as there's no significant injuries to the teams. When the line came out on the game Tuesday night, Air Force at San Diego State, the line was 2.5, right around there. Well, my power ratings had Air Force winning the game in that spot by 5. So I went ahead and played him, even though I had read one of the Air Force players who had said that, he said this after they beat San Diego State up in Colorado Springs the first time. He goes, they've probably got 3 or 4 talking about the Aztecs NBA players on that team. He goes, but 5 beats 1 every time. And he goes, and we're 5 and they're 1, basically, because not saying that they only had 1 player, but they play like individuals. Yeah. So the guy with the ball is always trying to create a shot for himself, where Air Force is doing it with a team concept. And I thought, it's a little arrogant there, but, it didn't seem unhealthy at the time, like that kind of cockiness or arrogance. But they came out against San Diego State. Not only did the Aztecs have the athleticism, as Dave mentioned, that you need to defeat this Air Force squad, but they also played together as a team. And Air Force was flat out horrible right from the time they stepped off the airplane in San Diego. I mean, they were missing steps on the way down to the tarmac. They must have been, because when they were on the court, they missed open layups. They missed a couple of dunks early in the game. They missed their first 13 three-point attempts. And I'm going to tell you right now, at least 8 of those 13 were wide-open shots. Yeah. They were horrible. They were flat, and that leads me to believe that they thought they were going to show up and win this game, and that goes back to the arrogance factor. As far as New Mexico is concerned, even though they are a little bit galvanized from what happened with that Wyoming fight, they've lost 7 of the last 10, and they're not playing defense. They're giving up over 75 points per game in the last 8 tilts. And I think with Air Force coming off, a real cold slap in the face might right that ship a little bit, or I guess that would be Navy. They're going to right their flight a little bit and get the victory here down in Albuquerque. So a rare road conference win for Air Force.
And that's the only thing keeping me off the game is they just have not played well on the road this year. Teams are getting up for them, and and I think a lot of it's becomes they got a lot of national attention early, and they became really the marquee team in the conference, the team to beat.
Sure.
And but you're right, the situation may favor Air Force a little bit here, and so I'm probably going to stay out of this particular game. But I like it's an interesting points you're raising, the Falcons, and it'll be interesting to see how they fare the rest of the way, because they got some tough road games still to come. They have to come into Las Vegas, and I'm going to tell you something. I don't think they've beaten UNLV in this court. UNLV's got the athleticism and the motivation and the home court skills to get it done. So.
And they've got a coach as good as Air Force has. Lon Kruger, I think, is the best in the Mountain West Conference. I think
Lon Kruger, and I really say this without any bias. I mean, yes, we see the team all the time, but I think Lon Kruger should be, in my opinion, one of the candidates for National Coach of the Year this year. He's done a great job. Phenomenal job.
Everybody knows this for the most part. Some people don't. We'll say it again. He took 2 different schools to the Final Four. And I'll tell you what, if he sticks around here for a while, he's going to have this team playing for Elite 8 finishes and maybe even a couple of Final Fours down the line. I think he's just a fantastic coach. He's a great college coach, and this is where he belongs. And as long as, I don't see him going anywhere else, Dave. I really think he's found a home. And they're packing them back again, 18,000 fans per home game. So I like what's going on with Lon Kruger right now.
Even with all the parking problems.
That's right.
Boy, they've got them right now. That's a mess.
There's nothing better than being at a UNLV basketball game, and I've been to a lot of basketball games around the country.
That's great.
There's nothing better when there's 18,000 people in the Thomas and Mack, and it's rocking and rolling like they do from start to finish.
Yep, it's getting to be fun again to follow basketball here in the desert. Okay, going to come back with this week's best bets and remind you about some of the great offers we've got this weekend in our final segment of this week's Proline, so stick around.
Coming up next, our Proline Best Bets, the biggest selection from today's show.
For my best bet pick, we'll talk about a game right here on Proline, the professional basketball contest between Toronto and Detroit. I'll agree with Scott in that contest. I'm going to play under the total. And I tell you what, it doesn't matter. Pro, college basketball, I'm on a heater with both of those sports right now. Take advantage of it. Give me a call on Saturday or late Friday night. My $20 power play line, I've got 3 guaranteed plays for you. 2 conference game of the year releases in college hoops, plus my pro basketball game of the month. All 3 plays, just $20, 1-900-226-0410.
Well, Glenn just gave you my best bet, which is also the under. 2 great minds thinking alike again, hopefully, knock on wood. But I tell you what, we've been just winning everything that we give out on Proline. As we mentioned, we are 5-0 this year with Proline packages in 2007. We hit our only countdown so far, going 4-1, including a Game of the Year winner at the top with BYU a couple of weekends ago. We're going to rack it up and do it again. A big 5-play countdown for only $8, topped off by another college basketball Game of the Year. All 5 plays available right now at 1-800-521-1872. We're going to go 5-0 this weekend for $8. Make sure to call.
I'm going to go this matchup between Virginia and Virginia Tech, and I call it a gut feel. I think Virginia Tech really comes to play in this game. In a game they desperately need at this point to get their ship back in the water. So Virginia Tech at home against Virginia for the Proline Best Bet this week. Now, my college basketball Game of the Year is going on Saturday. You can buy it right now for $50 right here at the website. Or on Saturday morning, you can call the toll-free number, which is 1-800-547-4224. I'll give you the game completely free of charge. And I'm also going to toss in some nice bonuses with that, too. Seems to me rather obvious as to which way you should do this. If you want to spend the $50, I'll be very happy to take it from you. But I think this is the best move. Call that 1-800-547-4224 number on Saturday morning and get set to collect in a big way with my college basketball Game of the Year. We're done for this week. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. A lot of basketball coverage coming up in the next few weeks here. Football season's over, but we're not going anyplace. We're sticking around. We'll begin to take some looks at some Major League Baseball prospects for this season as well, because pitchers and catchers are reporting and spring training about to get underway. So lots of good stuff still to come on the web show each and every week. We hope you'll return on a regular basis to our website and check out the show. For Scott and for Glenn and all the guys, and for Jim Feist as well, I'm Dave Koken. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for watching us this week, and be sure to catch Proline on the web next weekend, available Friday nights for more great insight.